2 minutes for each response and a 1 minute rebuttal if the candidate so chooses. And the first question will be answered first by Congressman Gibson. And it says, we have always had a strong relationship with Israel. How do you see our relationship with Israel going forward and our involvement in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, first of all, let me say this is very personal for me. As a young man at the age of 26, I was in the sands of Saudi Arabia. And then when Desert Storm kicked off, I was sent north with the rest of the formations. And, at that moment, we had Scuds flying in every direction. And I learned through the evening update that those Scuds were also hitting Israel. And as a student of history, I thought, oh my goodness, and sometimes it's easy to forget now, but the Soviet Union was still an empire. And it was a very serious threat that this operation in Iraq could very well spin off into a regional war, and maybe even a world war. And our country asked Israel to do something that it's very difficult for any one country to do to another. We asked them not to respond. And when they didn't respond, that's something I will never forget. Israel is a dear friend of ours. They share our values, our democracies, our democratic approaches, and we must be there always for our friends. They were there for us in those tough times. And so now, as we go forward, it's vitally important, particularly in a tough period, when we're looking at the specter of a possible nuclear-armed Iran. I have voted to ensure that that does not happen. We cannot have a situation with deterrence with Iran. At the same time, war is in no one's interest. It's not in Iran's interest, it's not in Israel's interest, and it's certainly not in our interest. And so we need the very best diplomacy right now, that we need to be united with all of our friends and allies around the world so that these sanctions shall work. And even though it's tough to imagine a lasting peace with Palestine, we must move forward. And I believe that Israel is committed to doing that too. And so together we go forward imagining a day without war and working towards that end.
Israel is one of our most important and long-cherished allies, and the security and stability in the Middle East is based upon Israel's security and its peace in that region. We have seen in the Middle East over the past many decades the dangers of instability, the dangers of escalation of combat, the dangers of mistaking and oversimplifying disputes there. So one thing that has been constant is our strong relationship with Israel, which has been a beacon of democracy in that region and an anchor for democratic growth and economic growth in the region. An Iran armed with nuclear weapons is unacceptable, and we must use all measures and appropriate steps to ensure that Iran does not destabilize the Middle East and threaten the security and stability of that region. That means starting first and foremost with diplomacy. It means using targeted sanctions as appropriate, as have been working in the recent past to slowly change the direction of that government, and leaving all options on the table to ensure that Iran understands that it cannot be a unilateral force for instability and aggression in that region. The United States has a strong record of standing with its allies, and that's what we need to do when it comes to Israel and our democratic friends in the Middle East.
Each candidate can have up to 1 minute for rebuttal.
Well, I think we largely agree on this. Let me just make a couple other points, and I'm happy to hear that because, you know what, that's the thing in our democracy. I think too often we focus on our differences. If we have 20 issues and we disagree on 12, let's work on the 8 we agree upon. It's a country that has so much more in common than we ever had apart. A couple of the points that, we have an agreement with Israel. We give them up to $3 billion a year in aid. It is important. It's really important for their defense. We do Iron Dome with them, with Arrow. 70% of it is actually spent here in the United States of America. It's also important when you think of the situation, like, for example, in Egypt. Very concerning at this point. And as we go forward with Egypt, and I was on training exercise with Egyptian paratroopers, I know that they cherish their relationship with us, but any kind of continued aid to Egypt, they need to honor their peace agreement with Israel so we don't destabilize the region. Thank you.
And I'll agree with the Congressman that it is good for us as we start this debate to start on a basis where we can find agreement across the aisle. In my time at the CIA, I was able to see folks of all different political persuasions working together to ensure that we were doing together what was in the best interest of the national security of the United States. And important for us, I know there are going to be some very sharp differences and sharp disagreements tonight when it comes to policy. And so always important to come back to those anchors where we can find areas of agreement. It's always been said that politics should stop at the water's edge. And sadly, that hasn't always been true. But I'm very glad that the Congressman and I can agree on this critically important issue to our own future and the stability and future of our own country.